Hi, and welcome to our end of the year reminders video. I'm going to show you some things that you'll want to make sure you pay attention to be as prepared as you can as we approach the end of the school year and the end of your either year one or year two induction program. So the first thing is we're going to cover these things to remember. So we're going to talk about the final ILP, the due dates for that, depending on what year you are, and of course the expectations for your final ILP. We're going to talk about the final collaborative log, when it's due, and then just making sure that you have all your other months done. Exit interviews. So if you are a year two or an ECO, you are exiting induction this school year. So we'll go over some reminders for that. If you're a year one, I would still suggest watching that part because it will prepare you for next year. The intent survey, so something that we send out, and it's super important for us as we plan for the next school year and the needs that we have of our program. We'll talk about a transcript and who might be eligible for receiving one at the end of the school year. And then we're going to cover the university units with our partnership with the University of the Pacific. Okay, so the first thing is the final ILP. So you're going to want to first make sure that you've completed box 3 for your final placement. That box always gets missed the most frequently, and so we just want to make sure we double check that one. So if you are a mentor watching this, please double check that for your candidate as well. They should have 3 placements from draft 1, draft 2, and final. And this is that section where they put emerging, exploring, or applying. Then the next thing is you want to make sure that you link your evidence in box 6. So you should have your evidence ready to go, either in Google Drive or something that's easy to link to. And you'll want to make sure it is linked so that we can easily access it as I review them and as you go to share them in your exit interview for those who are exiting. So I'm actually just going to really quickly show you how to do that with a sample. So if you see this sample, there we go, of an ILP, when you come to box 6, this is where you have your list of evidence at this point. But as you start to get ready for the final ILP, you're going to want to actually link your evidence there. So what you do to do that is you're going to go ahead and highlight the part you want to link. So pre and post assessments for this one. Right click, and then you're going to click on link. And here's where you'd put the link for your evidence. Or if it's down here, like it's showing up for me, sample evidence for elementary. This is what I want to link here. And then just I can double check my link. And you do want to make sure you have your permission set to anyone in FUSD can view it. That way I can see it. Sometimes they come and they're blocked. So then I might have to request edit or request viewing access. So just make sure. So I can see that it's there. Again, this is just a sample. But there it is, my pre-assessment for EL student, post-assessment for EL student. So you just want to make sure that everything you have is linked. All right. And then the other reminder for box 6, I would say, would just be to remember the focus students that you need, because you need to make sure you have your EL student, like I just showed in my sample, as well as your student with special needs. And then the third student is the student of your choice. And just as a reminder, let's say you have 2 action plan items in each of your 3 goals. That's 6 action plan items. From those 6 action plan items, you should then have 6 pieces of evidence because there should be 1 piece of evidence per action plan item. Of that total, so of all 6 pieces, 3 of those need to be for your focus students. So 1 with an EL student, 1 with a student with special needs, and 1 with the student of your choice. I know there's some confusion sometimes, or you think that you have to have all 3 focus students in every goal. You do not. It can be anywhere in your ILP, but it does depend on the pieces of evidence that you have for student work. So I hope that clarifies it for people. And the reason we say in our newsletter, we say you might have 6 to 12 pieces of evidence. Well, that's because let's say you had 3 pieces of evidence per box. Well, now you have 9, right? But for our ECO candidates, they were working on 4 goals this year. So they may have up to 12 pieces of evidence total. So hopefully I didn't confuse anybody too much by adding that information, but I just wanted you to know how what the expectation is for your evidence, especially for the focus students. And then the last thing for what you're going to complete, well, 2 things, but the first one is the box 8. This is your last reflection. So you're going to go in, and I'll just show you where that is, even though you've seen it all year long. So down here in box 8 is where you would add your end of year reflections of measurable outcomes. So you're going to choose a piece of evidence and then describe how it shows student growth or learning, and then a different piece of evidence, or the same, it could be the same actually, to describe how it demonstrates teacher growth or learning. But you do want to make sure you reflect appropriately based on the prompts here. And then what would your next steps be on this goal? So you just want to make sure you fill that in. And this is for each goal that you have. So you'll have, like I said, 3 goals for most people. Unless you're an ECO candidate, you have 4 goals. So you want to make sure you have each box 8 filled out. And then the very, very last thing is this observation section. So you just want to make sure that you have this filled out for all 3 required observations from your mentor teacher. And you'll put the date for pre-observation conference, the actual date of the observation, and the post-observation conference. And you'll have that for all 3. And then down here, you're just going to fill this in with 1 to 2 sentences, and you're going to discuss the observation feedback you received from your mentor this year that had the biggest impact on your teaching practice. So again, real brief, just 1 or 2 sentences, and then you're done. And so just a reminder, if you are a year 1 candidate, your final ILP is due April 29th. If you are a year 2 or an ECO candidate, which means you're exiting with us, it's due at the time of your exit interview. And we'll talk about exit interviews as we go along. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. So this is the collaborative log. So your final collaborative log for induction for this school year is the May log. So even though you're turning in your ILP April 29th, the expectation is that you're still working on meeting with your mentor up through May 20th to be exact. So May 20th is when the May collaborative log is due. And a lot of people use this time to talk about maybe preparations for next year or just kind of wrapping up this year. And so it's still a time to collaborate and meet and to work on your teaching practice. You also will want to just double check that you have submitted all the logs that were due for the school year. So every month. I think we started the first one in September. So just make sure you don't have anything missing. Because if there's any outstanding assignments that are not turned in, we won't be able to put your name over to HR to recommend you for that clear credential until all the induction work is complete. So, you may find that you somehow forgot to submit one from back in November or October. You can still do that. Just go ahead and make sure you take care of it and make sure you show it to your mentor as well. And, most likely you've heard from us by now if you have those missing or outstanding assignments, because Shirley stays on top of that with keeping track, and she sends those email reminders out, and I send some as well. So you should have them taken care of, and if you don't, you'll want to talk to us right away. Make sure we get it done. Okay, exit interviews. So again, this applies for year 2 and ECO candidates for this year, but if you are a year 1, it doesn't hurt to just get a sneak peek of what to expect for your next year. So the first thing is you'll sign up for a day and time. So Shirley will be sending out the way to do that. She'll send out a link for you to sign up for your day and time and schedule those. They will be for 1 hour, but usually they end a little bit sooner than that. But the time scheduled is for an hour, and you'll be meeting virtually. So we're going to be using Zoom like we did last year. And you will meet with one of our exit interviewers who is trained in doing this. So they will ask you questions, and we'll go into that in a second when I talk about the resources to share with you. But it's just a one-on-one. And like I said, it's we have a whole hour scheduled, but you don't always take the whole hour. But some things you'll want to do in advance is make sure you have your ILPs handy. So if you are a year 2 and you have your year 1 ILP still, some people do like to refer to that during the interview process just because they might have something that they really wanted to share from that year. So that's fine if you have it. If you don't have it, it's okay. But you do need to have at least this year's ILP handy, because you'll be sharing your screen and using that as you provide your responses to the questions that you're being asked. You'll also want to make sure you have your evidence linked so you can easily access those as well. And it wouldn't be a bad idea, would be a good idea to go ahead and figure out what evidence you plan to share at what parts of the interview. And I'll show you the questions in a second. They've been here all year long. You could have looked at them all year long, and it's the same 5 questions on this rubric that we use. So, you can look at that and figure out what evidence would work to respond to certain parts of the interview. And then it would be a great idea to practice the interview. So this is usually with your mentor teacher. You would just schedule one of your weekly meetings to be around this, preparing and practicing. And your mentor teacher would take on the role of the exit interviewer, ask you the questions, and you'd practice giving responses while referencing the evidence as you go along. And the other thing I was going to say about that was the evidence, when you're sharing it, you just want to make sure that it's visible, that the person that you're sharing it with can actually see it, not just talking about it. It just helps a little bit more when you can share it that way. And then, so we have some resources that might be helpful for you to look at. Again, these have been here all year long, but I just wanted to show you them. So you'll go to our FUSD induction web or resources page, and it's under the end of year resources tab. So over here on the left, and we have all of these things that you can look at to help you prepare. We even did a mock exit interview years ago when I had a partner in induction. So you can look at that if you want to. It's kind of fun, but it gives you an idea of how the interview process goes. And then there's an exit interview checklist you can also refer to. So it just says all the things that it would be a good idea to have on hand. So like I'm going to show you the rubric in just a second. Any of the anything that you might need to have on hand for the interview, your ILPs, the evidence like we talked about. You can go through this and look at it, but it has a lot of good information about what you might want to do to prepare. Oh, and then even making sure that you have taken the time to visit the CTC website recently and just verify that you have your personal email address on file. Because sometimes, if you end up leaving FUSD, you may not have access to that email anymore. So you don't want to use that one. You always want to use your personal one to make sure you always have access to it. Okay, so then the other thing would be the rubric that is used. So this is the rubric. It's these 5 questions that are being asked by the exit interviewer. I do want to add that there are definitely going to be other questions that come up. This just happens in an organic conversation. If you are responding to something and they have a follow-up question, that happens. But these are the 5 that they assess on the rubric. So just keep that in mind, that these are the core questions that are being asked, and then they may have some follow-up questions as they're talking with you. You will want to be in the applying or integrating innovating sections on all of the questions. And to just ensure that you are, I definitely recommend taking a look at this and seeing what kind of criteria fits in those sections. The biggest thing is you really want to make sure you have clear evidence for everything that you respond to, and that you want to make sure you are linking your language to the CSTP language. So using that as much as possible in your responses is what gets you over across on this rubric. So again, I would definitely recommend practicing this with your mentor in advance, and even just mapping out your responses. You can write them out. You can have, what evidence you're going to use when. Totally fine to do that. In fact, we really do encourage it. So I'll just read the questions really quickly so you have an idea. But these 5: what have you learned about yourself as a teacher? What have you learned about your students? Describe a piece of evidence that best illustrates a shift you have made in your teaching. Which action plan item from your ILPs resulted in the most meaningful collaboration with other teachers or resources? And what will you focus on in the next year? So again, just make sure you take some time to review this and that you are prepared as much as possible. But I do want to say it is a really, it's not a super stressful thing. I know a lot of people go into this. It's called an interview, and I know that it sounds a little bit scary, but it really is a conversation. The more and more I hear from the exit interviewers how it goes, it really just becomes a very natural conversation, and you've done the work, and now it's your time to shine and show it off. So it really is just a good way to kind of reflect on your time in the program and just wrap it up. Okay. Oh, maybe there was another resource. Let me just double check. Oh, the only other thing is the verification form. So that's also something you'll do at the end of the year. So either year 1 or year 2 in ECO, and they are fillable. And it's just for your mentor to sign off to show that they, looked at your ILP 3 times for each version of it. And then that you guys work together on your placements on the continuum. So they just sign this off up here and here, and then you will sign it below and turn that in. And that will also be due May 20th at the same time as your last collaborative log. Okay. All right, so then the intent survey. So the intent survey, is something that we send out every year at the end of the year so that we can get an idea for planning for next year. So there will be a link for this survey in the April newsletter. Be on the lookout for that. And it is due May 6th. And some of the things that it asks are just, are you staying in FUSD next year? Are you staying at the same site? Do you prefer to keep your mentor or change your mentor? Those kinds of things, just so we can plan ahead and be ready for next year. So it is important that you fill this out so that we're not having to reach out to you and get all these questions answered. So please do that. I would say just do it as soon as you know the answers to it. Now, to be fair, there are things that you may not know the answers to. You may decide in the summertime that your family is going to move away, or you're going to switch school sites. Things do happen. But if you could just kind of let us know what you know now, it will help us get a little bit of a head start on things, and we understand that things may change. Okay, so then transcripts. So based on what you fill out in the intent survey, we'll determine who may need a transcript. So if you complete year one with us this year, but you're not going to be with us next year, we would provide a transcript for you. And this transcript will just say, this candidate completed a full year of induction in FUSD. And that way, if you go somewhere else in California, you can have that and not have to do year one over again. I cannot say for sure how it would work out of state. There are some places that don't even have induction programs, and then there are some who do, and they may very well take our transcript. It really just kind of depends on each individual program. But it's good to have it. So if you do plan on staying in California, but you may not be staying in Fremont, it will still allow you to just show that you finished a full year with us. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out anytime. But usually that's the only time that we have those requests, are if you're moving on. Because if you're finishing your whole induction program with us, if you're completing it and having your exit interview with us this year, you wouldn't need to have a transcript, because you will be recommended for a clear credential, and you will have that going forward. And so they'll know you finished induction because you'll show up on CTC with a clear credential. One other thing that I did want to mention, though, with that is that if you have some outstanding requirements with the CTC, and you'll know that by logging into CTC and seeing what's required for you to get your clear. If you have any outstanding things after you finish induction, we won't be able to recommend you for a clear credential until it's all done. So I know some of you are still working on CalTPA or RECA or both. So even if you finish induction, your name will go to HR, but they will see that you haven't completed everything else. So you can't get recommended for a clear credential until all the requirements are done. So just keep that in mind. And that's why, it's great if you can finish it during your time in induction, because then you're done. And if not, then you just keep working on those things. But unfortunately, after induction's done, you don't have a mentor anymore. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward for next year. Okay, university units. So this is, we have a big section on this in our handbook, and so I linked it below where it says UOP, and it's on pages 29 to 31. But just some information for you, some quick information, would be that Shirley will be sending an email, and it's around 6/3, so June 3rd, to each candidate and mentor, because candidates and mentors can both qualify for units. So at this time, you'll be informed how many units you are qualifying for. So just so you kind of know going into it, which again, this is all in the handbook as well. If you have less than 2 late assignments, you'll be eligible for 8 units this year. If you have more than 2 late assignments, you will be eligible for 4 units this year. So you'll if you have had that many late assignments or not. So either way, you'll get some units. And so if you're a year 1 right now, then you can get 8 this year and 8 next year, so a total of 16 if you're still in our program. Or if you go somewhere else that has the same partnership, you can get units for the second year if you do your second year somewhere else. And the units go with you because you are paying for these units. What it is our partnership is that our program is the coursework, and then the university is who you would register for and pay for the units. So I think sometimes there's some confusion there, but this is the course, this is the work you're doing. And then just like any course you would take at a university, you would still be responsible to pay for those units. But it is a really good deal because it's still $50 a unit, which is like the cheapest anywhere you could find. I've looked and I've tried to help people get them after years of induction, or years later after induction, they want to go get units. I really couldn't find anything cheaper than that. So definitely, if you can, take advantage of it. I know it might seem like a lot right at the beginning, but if it helps you move along the pay scale, then it's definitely worth it. So when she sends you that email, it will have a link for how to register and pay for those units. And then you need to make sure that as soon as you do that, you request official transcripts be sent to you. And we really do recommend getting this done like June, July, as soon as you can, because sometimes there are delays. But in order for those units to apply to your pay scale, HR needs to receive them by September 30th of that school year. So September 30th, 2022 would be the deadline for them to receive those official transcripts for your pay scale to be, reflective of that. So again, 16 units, it may bump you to the next column. It may not, but if it does, you definitely want to make sure you turn them in before that September 30th or by that September 30th deadline, so that it can affect your pay if it will. You can have unofficial transcripts sent to you, but I know HR only takes official ones. So just make sure you request those and turn them in as soon as you can. And then just congratulations, you've completed a year of induction, and some of you are completing the whole program, and you're almost there. We really, really are close to the end here, and that's why we're wrapping things up and showing you all these end of year reminders. And I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions about any of the things in this video, or just any questions about anything we can help you with to finish off your year and make it strong, please let us know. Don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you for all your work.